Chapter 16, a wrap. It's a wrap. So there was this moment when it seemed like the EDL might actually pop off nationwide, right after Lee Rigby's murder in May 2013. The whole country was big mad. But only for a hot minute. At that time, I was trying to get my life together. Did some time for the passport thing, still had the mortgage drama hanging over me, and I was seriously rethinking my role in the EDL. Things at home were getting messy too. My cousin was getting chased down by Saiful Islam and his crew, and we had a whole street brawl outside my uncle's house. Another wild moment? Took my kids to a birthday party at this big indoor play gym, right? Pretty chill, just a bunch of moms with their little ones. But then I see him, Ibrahim. Dude was there with his kids and some women in burqas. I thought, all right, let's just ignore each other. Keep it moving. But nope, the drama followed. Next thing I know, someone tells me to look outside. 40 bearded guys, mullahs, the whole squad led by Saiful Islam. Straight up looked like a movie scene. I called Kev and some of the boys, handed my kids over to some moms, and braced for whatever was coming. 6 of these guys roll in, telling me to step outside. Whole place is watching. I went to the kitchen, looking for anything to defend myself. Had the chef freaking out, then boom, police sirens. So I walk out, and guess what? The cops start yelling at me. Get down, get down. Like, bro, are we seeing the same thing? There were 40 guys out there ready to end me, and I'm the one getting barked at. Unreal. Luckily, just in time, Kev, some uncles, and my brother-in-law pulled up, reinforcements. Things could have gone south real fast, but more cops showed up, and that was that. Still, I left that party thinking, great, my kids are never getting invited to another birthday party again. And yeah, that actually happened. When my little boy started school, the invites just stopped. That one hurt. At this point, I knew I couldn't keep dragging my family through this madness. But it's not like you can just log out of being Tommy Robinson. I'd created this whole persona, and there was no easy way out. Unless I wanted to live in a cave or get a whole new face, I was stuck. I needed time to think, but life wasn't giving me that. While I was locked up, Kev was catching heat, and my family was struggling. Shout out to Pamela Jeller for helping out, and to the EDL folks who pitched in. 1,800 pounds was raised while I was in solitary. Huge respect for that. But it wasn't enough to keep my family going, and I refused to beg the government for benefits. Some real ones helped, though. My old mate Cash, Jamaican, came to Luton when he was 11, would literally slide 100 pounds through my door every now and then. And yet, this guy couldn't even get a passport to go on holiday with me because of some bureaucratic nonsense. The system is beyond broken. By then, I was spiraling, feeling sorry for myself, pissed off at everything. Some people turned on me, some turned on Kev, and I knew for a fact they wouldn't last a day in our shoes. So I told the EDL crew I need time with my family, no demos for me. Then came May 22nd, my kid's birthday. Family's over, good vibes, and then I get the call. Turn on the TV. I stood there, watching the footage from Woolwich. Lee Rigby. Broad daylight, brutal. I turned to my wife and just said, I'm off. Yeah, that didn't go over well at home. I was literally trying to figure out how to exit the EDL, and now I was getting dragged right back in. Calls were flying in, people saying Muslims were out celebrating, shouting Allahu Akbar about the attack. I knew I had to go to Woolwich. Little did I know, 6 months before his death, Lee Rigby had actually been at a wedding in Luton with Kev. We jumped in the car, got to London, met up with a lot of the lads. The streets were buzzing, anger, rage, pure emotion. But despite what the media says, it wasn't some violent riot. It was people grieving, furious, and demanding answers. Of course, the press had a field day. EDL mob takes to the streets. Did they mention that we never beheaded anyone? Nah, of course not. I made a video talking about Lee Rigby, and it hit 600K views in days. My Twitter shot up by 50K followers overnight. That was it. Kev and I knew we were back in the game. The government? They completely fumbled the response. France had the Charlie Hebdo attack and the whole country united. Here? Nothing. We should have had a national rally for Lee Rigby, a chance for everyone to mourn, to show unity. Imagine if Muslim Brits had stepped up publicly to honor him. But nope. Instead, the government was busy protecting Muslim communities from possible backlash. If someone yelled at a woman in a burqa, boom, instant arrest, hate crime, case closed. Meanwhile, the group Tell Mama, funded by the government, was out here faking hate crime stats, trying to paint Britain as some anti-Muslim hellhole. Funny how that got swept under the rug. Lee Rigby wasn't just a soldier. He was a young lad with a family who fought for a country that basically shrugged at his murder. The government wanted him to be an inconvenience, not a symbol, but the people showed up for him. The EDL organized peaceful Walk for Lee rallies all over the UK. In 68 towns and cities, folks came out, paid respects, and walked in his honor. But the media? Silent. If we had rioted or caused chaos, they would have been all over it. I remember Sheffield, the UAF losers tried to block us from even reaching the war memorial. I told our lot, don't react. No chanting, no yelling. Just walk in silence with 2 fingers raised in a peace sign. We turned the corner, pure silence, right into a wall of screaming leftists and extremists losing their minds. But we stayed quiet, and guess what? The media called it EDL Hitler salutes. You literally can't win. One of the police officers who liaised with us that day called me afterward, said she was disgusted by the media's lies. She told me we did everything right, that we were completely respectful. I even recorded her because I knew no one would believe it otherwise. We walked in peace, we laid our flowers, and yet the same people who claim to fight for justice were the ones celebrating Lee Rigby's murder. So, tell me, what did we do wrong? So we pulled up to Downing Street, trying to keep it chill, trying to give off the right energy. Told everyone to keep it peaceful. But nah, bottles were raining down like it was some wild festival. And you gotta ask yourself, how much of this do the cops actually want to happen? Like, is this part of their game plan? They easily could have kept the UAF and Muslim protesters at a distance when we walked down Whitehall, but nah, they let them get close. Why? Because they needed some drama for the cameras. And guess who they were going to blame? Us. Every damn time. That day, I actually caught most of it on camera myself. Randomly, there was also a group of Sikhs protesting for something personal to them. I'd even chatted with their organizer the night before and told him they'd have 0 issues from us. And then the cops? Classic move. They placed the UAF and Muslim protesters right behind the Sikh group. Meanwhile, we got marched in from Trafalgar Square, straight into the mix. Now, I don't know what they were expecting, but the second we saw the Sikh group, all our guys just started clapping. Straight respect. The looks on the Sikhs' faces? Pure shock. Like, this was not the narrative they'd been fed. But the cops weren't done playing. Their masterstroke? Blocked our PA system a mile away. Smooth. Hard to give speeches when you can barely be heard over a crowd that's already on edge. So me, my guy Gilly, and Jason Mariner from the Chelsea lot, we straight up carried the whole damn system back ourselves. Cops tried to threaten us, but we called their bluff. Finally got the rally going, and I kicked off my speech with a nod to Churchill and what he said about the Sikhs. Then, boom, bottles start flying from the UAF lot. Our guys were about to react, but the Sikh protesters were right in the middle, so everything just stopped. No chaos, no fights. Just pure awkwardness for the cops, who were probably hoping for a full-on riot. Later, the Sikh organizer came up to me on camera and straight up admitted, "The police set you up." And I was like, duh. They always do. And, of course, you never heard about the time we actually helped out a Sikh community group when their summer school was getting harassed. We rolled up, had a chat with the kids, educated them on Sikh contributions to Britain. And guess what? The harassment stopped. But no, that kind of story never makes the headlines. The police, they're always engineering just enough chaos to justify their overtime pay. Every demo we arranged, we tried to keep it smooth. But they'd flip the script last minute to cause problems that didn't even need to exist. Absolute jokers. And then there was the whole Lee Rigby situation. That whole tragedy, and the public barely reacted. Like, how did Britain just shrug at something like that? A soldier gets murdered in broad daylight, and people treat it like a minor inconvenience. 1 week of tabloid outrage, and then poof, everyone moves on. So me and Kev decided to do a charity walk in Lee's memory. Simple, right? Just a peaceful walk from Parliament to Woolwich. Raised £6 for Help for Heroes, and they rejected it. Said they don't take political donations. Absolute BS. We weren't even a political party. Then we tried to donate the money to a charity for a little girl named Amelia Mae Davis, who needed life-saving treatment. And guess what? They refused it too. Like, make it make sense. This country can spend millions protecting extremist nut jobs, but can't take charity money to help save a kid? Her family wanted the money, but the charity blocked it because it came from us. Anyway, we went ahead with the walk. Cops tried stopping us, of course. Apparently, walking through Tower Hamlets was insensitive because of community tensions. Like, so what? You're telling me I can't walk in certain areas in my own country? That one still burns me up. We had police escorts, plus a bunch of UAF clowns trailing us, trying to start shit. One of them straight up walked up and punched Kev, right in front of the police. And did they do anything? Nah, of course not. Instead, they arrested us for obstructing the police. I kept asking, how exactly are we obstructing you? And the officer just blanked me. She was obviously getting orders through her earpiece, running on autopilot. Then the judge got involved. And man, she was pissed. She straight up snapped at the cops, said she wasn't limiting my freedoms, and let me go. First time in a while, I actually had a little faith in the system. But it didn't end there. The media, as usual, took things to clown levels. One paper ran with EDL boss in Tulisa kidnap probe. Like, what? Here's what actually happened. After the Aldgate demo, I pulled over with a TV producer to record a quick video. Turns out, the house we stopped near? Tulisa's. Her PA saw us, freaked out, and called the cops, thinking we were some dodgy burglars. Next thing we knew, cop cars were swarming the place. They searched our car for burglary tools, then booked me for leaving my keys in the ignition. The logic? Car unattended. Meanwhile, every police car nearby also had keys in the ignition. I called them out on it, but obviously they didn't care. Fast forward, and the papers ran with that Tulisa headline like I was some kind of criminal mastermind. Honestly, it was hilarious. Next day in Liverpool, some scouser at a bus stop was reading the story, looked up at me, then back at the paper. I pointed at the headline, winked, and said, "Yeah, mate, we got her." Pure comedy. At the end of the day, the police, the media, they all played their games, and we played ours. But trust me, one day, I will stroll up to the East London Mosque on a Friday, just for the hell of it. Maybe live stream it too. So basically, if there were more than 3 people, the cops could shut us down. But since it was just me and Kev, they couldn't do jack. Then this local imam starts flexing, telling the police not to let us into Tower Hamlets. I straight up asked the officer, "Who do you work for? This dude or the British public?" Fast forward to the day, we had a police escort, but also a bunch of crusty UAF weirdos trying to start beef. They're like flies on trash, completely useless. And get this, the police literally let one of them walk up and punch Kev. It's all online. Just search Tommy Robinson Charity Walk on YouTube if you think I'm chatting rubbish. My guess? The cops expected us to react so they could swoop in and arrest us. But we were ahead of them. We already decided we weren't going to bite no matter what. Taking a hit was nothing new for us if it meant exposing the bigger issue. I was fuming, demanding they arrest the guy who just decked Kev. Did they? Of course not. Instead, they stopped us, and this senior officer, a woman, told us we were under arrest for obstructing police in the course of their duty. I kept asking, how exactly? She just stood there, earpiece in, clearly getting orders from higher up, and refused to answer. We didn't react. Their little setup failed, so they just arrested us anyway. I don't even think we had stepped into Tower Hamlets, but whatever. I told her fine, we'd go wherever she wanted. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. 3 bags full, ma'am. Didn't matter. They still slapped the cuffs on us. No way was she making any decisions herself. So off to the cells we went. Again, at the station, they hit me with bail conditions banning me from Tower Hamlets. But to accept bail, you have to agree to the terms. So I told them to shove it and dared them to remand me. They clearly weren't ready for that response, and it threw them off. Next thing, I'm in court, where the judge, big respect to her, absolutely lost it at the police. "I'm not limiting this man's freedoms," she said. Case dismissed. Still, the CPS, who are meant to be independent of the police, dragged me back to court 3 more times before it finally got thrown out. And honestly, I still feel like making a little trip to the East London Mosque after Friday prayers. Just for fun. The time the media said I kidnapped Tulisa Gum, So after the judge ruled I couldn't be banned from Tower Hamlets, we decided to go back, bigger than ever. But surprise, surprise, the Home Secretary stepped in with a fresh ban. They boxed us in near Aldgate East Tube Station. We hit up the High Court the night before to challenge it. Their excuse? The police couldn't control the reaction of the local community. We argued that under European law, you can't strip someone's rights just because of how others might react. Even the Met Commissioner admitted they weren't worried about policing us. They were scared of how Tower Hamlets' Muslim population would respond. So we hit them with the real question. Who's running Tower Hamlets? The Met or the Imam of the East London Mosque? Court still sided with the police and Home Secretary. And of course, they wanted the EDL to pay the police's costs, but not just the group. No, they wanted me personally to cough up £7,000. The judge agreed. I had 28 days to pay. Despite all that, the demo itself was unreal. Over 2,000 of us marched across Tower Bridge, filling it end to end. Epic sight, proper moment of pride. When we got to the demo spot, the cops started messing around. They asked me to move the crowd, so I did. But then I clocked what they were up to. They'd already started our 30-minute countdown. Me and Kev gave our speeches, and we were about to introduce a military vet when the police came over like, "You're running out of time." I called their bluff, told them to pull the plug on our PA system themselves if they wanted to make fools of themselves. But our soldier was going to speak, and he did. We ended up going 6 minutes over, entirely because of police delays. I wrapped it up by telling the crowd, "People expected trouble, but you've done yourselves proud. Head out the same way you came." Then the cops pulled another stunt. They asked me to help calm down some rowdy supporters. I turned a corner, and boom, about 10 of them tackled me, threw me to the ground, cuffed me, and chucked me in a van. Meanwhile, a bunch of UAF Muppets were full-on fighting the police and even threw a petrol bomb. But nah, apparently I was the real problem. Back to the cells, more bail conditions, same old story. So I was like, fine, if I can't enter Tower Hamlets, I'll just walk around it. And that's exactly what we did. 28 miles of pub crawling, cops trailing us the whole way. These unfit officers had to swap shifts every hour just to keep up. Kev even joked in one pub, "Don't look now, but are we being followed?" Absolute comedy. Then came the kidnapping drama. After the Aldgate demo, I stopped in a lay-by with Mike, a TV producer, to upload footage. I was mid-sentence in front of some posh house when a scrawny little bloke ran out, all panicked. Before we knew it, loads of cop cars rocked up. I was like, is it just me, or what's the emergency this time? They said they were searching our car for burglary equipment. Mate, I'm literally with a TV producer filming a documentary. But no, they were committed to the bit. Then one cop got cocky, trying to book me for leaving my car unattended with the keys in the ignition. So we walked up to all the police cars. Guess what? Every single one had the keys in the ignition. "Are you nicking your lot as well?" I asked. 2 weeks later, I was in Liverpool when my phone blew up. Headlines everywhere. EDL boss in Tulisa kidnap probe. Turns out, the house we filmed outside belonged to Tulisa. Yeah, the X Factor judge. The panicked little guy? Her PA. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. I even tweeted Bedfordshire police a pic of me pointing at my car boot, joking they should come get her. The final straw with the EDL, leaving the EDL, was a mix of things. It wasn't just the police, prison, or financial struggles. It was the internal drama. While the majority were solid, some regional organizers started doing their own thing, and the group was attracting more extreme elements. Me and Kev were getting wrecked financially. Every march, every protest, every time we got arrested, there was always a price to pay, and we weren't exactly employable anymore. Bills were stacking up, and when I got locked up for my U.S. trip, Kev took the brunt of it. The EDL wasn't what it used to be. Some of the new lot didn't have a clue what running it actually meant. Meanwhile, Kev, who had risked everything, was getting heat from people who didn't even know the half of it. And my family? I'd put them through hell. I used to think that if something happened to me, the movement would take care of them. But sitting in solitary, I realized if I died, they'd have nothing. Everything I had was frozen, and we couldn't even afford rent. So yeah, I walked away. Time to move on. I called my wife from prison once during that whole passport mess, and she was straight up bawling. We'd already had issues at the last 3 places we lived, and honestly, she was at her breaking point. Can't blame her. When armed police roll up, lock down your street, and raid your house looking for stuff that doesn't even exist, just to mess with you, it kind of ruins the neighborhood vibe. We just moved again, got the kids settled in a new school, trying to piece together something normal. And there I was, back behind bars, and she was flat broke. Sitting in my cell, I was spiraling. If she couldn't get the money, she'd have to go begging to the council, and knowing them, they'd probably shove her and the kids into some tiny, grimy bedsit in a random area. You think they wouldn't do that? You clearly don't know how petty these people are. I was down bad, feeling betrayed by everyone, by everything. But also, I felt like the biggest idiot. I'd gotten so caught up in everything, so obsessed with the whole thing, and in the process, I'd been selfish as hell. Looking back, I'd totally hit a wall. My 4 weeks in solitary turned into 5 months. Lost 2 stone, had abscesses on my face, looked and felt like absolute trash. Then came the whole firestorm after the Lee Rigby murder. But after that, nothing changed. Nothing was changing. I started checking in on what was happening with the EDL and saw these cringe, white pride weirdos creeping in. I'd fought so hard to keep them out, but there they were, turning up at a Manchester demo, waving their dumb flags. I was just like, seriously? This is what I'm dealing with now? That's when it hit me. If I wanted to keep running the EDL, I'd have to fight a whole new war, not just against the usual enemies, but against people who were supposed to be on our side. And honestly, I was exhausted. I couldn't tell who was a friend, who was fake, and who was just waiting to stab me in the back. Even when I managed to kick these people out, they'd just go off and form their own little cults. If you saw the angry, white, and proud doc in 2015, you saw some of the clowns I got rid of. And now, suddenly, I was their enemy? Make it make sense. I'd already gone head-to-head with the Northeast, Northwest, and Yorkshire Infidels, the Southeast Alliance, kicked them all out. But it never ended. Constant power struggles, and I was just done. Too many battles, too much drama, and the cherry on top, I was wrecking my own life in the process. Before those 22 weeks in solitary, I'd been living in some fake, hyped-up fantasy. Drinking, doing drugs, acting like some wannabe gangster when really, I was just a loser, a total failure. Rubbish husband, even worse dad. Looking back at myself in 2013, I didn't even recognize the guy who'd started the EDL. I was an absolute mess. I don't know if it crept up on me or if getting hyped up by massive crowds just went to my head. Maybe Tommy Robinson became more of a character than an actual person. Either way, I didn't see how far gone I was until I stepped back. 5 months in jail, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing, was like hitting the reset button. I still had all this weight on me. Stress over the mortgage case, everything catching up to me. Before that stint in solitary, I was a ticking time bomb. Looking back, did I have a death wish? Probably. I thought about it a lot. It was like living with a terminal illness. I'd convinced myself I was going to die sooner or later, so I might as well go out swinging. That's how I ended up walking into the snooker club in Luton, where all the Muslim gangs hung out. I'd go in there, grab a beer, stare them down like, what the fuck are you going to do about it? I was off my head. And here's the dumbest part. I actually believed that if I got killed, it would spark some kind of revolution. That people would finally wake up, fight back, take a stand. But the way the country reacted to Lee Rigby, that fantasy got shattered real quick. If I took a bullet or a blade, no one would be mourning me. There'd probably be more people celebrating. That was the cold, hard reality. I had good mates like Tom Stoker and John English who actually cared, who were genuinely worried about me. But was I a good mate back? Nah, probably not. And then there was my mom. I couldn't get her out of my head. She was sick, and I was convinced she wasn't going to make it. The thought of her spending her last days stressing over my chaos, that wrecked me. Kev had it rough too while I was inside. Because we were so high profile, he lost most of his work. Not because he wasn't good at what he did, not because people didn't like him, just because he was too much trouble to be around. Too risky. Too controversial. Were we blacklisted? Probably. Every way they could squeeze us, they did. I told Kev, I'm done, mate. I need to focus on my family. And he just looked at me and said, "I'm right by your side, Broov." And it wasn't just us. Other people were getting disillusioned too. After we left, a bunch of them formed Team Tommy to keep me in the loop, even while I was in prison. People like Ivan Humble, Tim Ablett, Kieran Hallett, Glenn Saffer, Stuart Austin, Tony Lanks, and of course Helen Gower. The real ones. The ones who always had my back.